Hello everyone, welcome to History class. Today we are going to continue Lesson 9 of History, Socio-Religious Reforms. Earlier we had discussed about anti-sati movement, widow remarriage movement, Ramakrishna mission, Theosophical Society, movement against child marriage, women's education movement, and caste reforms. And today the topic of the day is Sikh reform movements and reform among Muslims and Parsis. The main objectives of today's topic are you will come to know about different reform movements brought by Sikhs, Muslims, and Parsis. But before discussing today's topic, let us recall definitions and cross questions related to the previous topics. Definitions: campaign, sati, untouchability, theosophy, theosophical society, and reformers. Now answer these cross questions. Who founded an organization called the Pratna Samaj? Who started an organization by the name of Sri Narayan Dharm Paripalana Yogam? Who founded the All India Harijan Sangh? Who was the president of the Theosophical Society? And who was the first woman teacher in Maharashtra? Now let us discuss new words related to today's topic. Reform, removal of defects and putting things in a better form. Parda system, a system in which women had to cover their face with dupatta or any other cloth. Polygamy, having more than one wife at a time. SGPC, Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee. Parsi, a member of Zoroastrian religious sect in India. Now, let us read and discuss about the different reform movements during 19th century. During the 19th century, the Indians were filled with the desire to adapt their society according to the requirements of the modern world of science, democracy, and nationalism, and the Indians were determined to let no obstacle stand in the way. So, the thoughtful Indians set out to reform their traditional religions. During the 19th century, religion was a basic part of people's life, and there could be little social reform without religious reform. While trying to remain true to the foundations of their religions, Indians remolded themselves according to the needs or requirements of their religions and society. Many Indian reformers launched different movements for the religious reforms in India during the 19th century. These movements produced mixed results. Now let us read from the book. Sikh reform movements. Reforms were started by Singh Sabhas among the Sikhs. They played an important role in spreading education among the Sikhs. Means during 19th century, the reforms among the Sikhs were started by the Singh Sabhas. Singh Sabha was the society of Singhs in the 19th century movement within Sikhism that began as a defense against the activities of Christians and Hindus. And its chief aims were the revival of the teachings of the Sikh gurus, the production of religious literature in Punjabi, and a campaign against illiteracy. Basically, amongst the Sikhs, the reform movement was started by the Singh Sabhas, which were formed in Amritsar and Lahore in 1870s. Through the efforts of the Singh Sabha and the support of the British, the Khalsa College was founded in 1892 at Amritsar. This college and other such institutions promoted Gurmukhi, Sikh teachings, and Punjabi literature as a whole, besides imparting education in science and humanities. The Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, SGPC, and the Akali Dal launched a movement to reform the Gurdwaras in the early decades of the 20th century. Decades means period of 10 years. The Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee or SGPC is an organization in India responsible for the management of Gurdwaras, Sikh places of worship in three states of Punjab, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh, and the Union Territory of Chandigarh. SGPC also administers Darbar Sahib in Amritsar, whereas the Shiromani Akali Dal is a centre-right Sikh-centric state political party in Punjab, India. The party is the second oldest in India after Congress, being founded in 1920. And in 20th century, SGPC and Akali Dal launched a movement to reform the Gurdwaras. Finally, the struggle resulted in a law passed in 1925 according to which the Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee SGPC was given the rights to manage all the Gurdwaras. Means later in 1920, the Akali movement was launched for the reform of Gurdwaras, which were under the control of priests and Mahants, who regarded the Gurdwaras as their private property. The Akalis and the Sikhs were successful in their struggle when the government passed a new Sikh Gurdwara Act in 1925. By this act, the right of management of the Sikh Gurudwaras passed into the hands of the Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee or SGPC. The corrupt and selfish Mahants who had been exploiting these religious places were turned out of the Gurudwaras. This was certainly a great movement for the reform in the Sikh Gurudwaras. Now, let us read and discuss about reform among Muslims. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan contributed towards the betterment and empowerment of the Muslims. He wanted to promote Western education among the Muslims. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was an ardent socio-religious reformer amongst Muslims in India. He strove hard to remove British hostility towards Muslims. He persuaded Muslims to accept social, religious, and educational reforms to enable them to change with time. He advocated English education and asked Muslims to learn modern science and adopt modern ways and ideas. He founded the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental MAO College at Aligarh in 1875. The college later grew into Aligarh Muslim University. Earlier, in 1864, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan founded the Translation Society, later known as the Scientific Society at Aligarh, which published Urdu translations of English books. Sir Syed's greatest work was the opening of the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College at Aligarh in Uttar Pradesh in the year 1875. It later developed into the Aligarh Muslim University. He also worked for women emancipation. Emancipation means freedom or liberty. He advocated the removal of parda. Parda was a system in which women had to cover their face with dupatta or a cloth. He worked for education among women. He condemned the customs of polygamy. Polygamy means having more than one wife at a time. So we can say that Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was a social reformer and he was against parda system, polygamy, easy divorce among Muslims and illiteracy among Muslim women. Later on, the British rewarded him with the title of Sir for his contributions to the society. And later on, after battling illness and old age, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan died on 27th March 1898. He was buried beside Sir Syed Masjid inside the campus of the Aligarh Muslim University. Now let us read and discuss about reform among Parsis. Parsis were the members of Zoroastrian religious sect in India. Dadabhai Naoroji pioneered the reform movement among the Parsis. He insisted on women's education, equal status of women, and Western education as a whole in the Parsi community. Dadabhai Naoroji was born in a Parsi family of Mumbai in Maharashtra in the year 1825. He took an active part in the national movement of India. His name ranks highest among the leaders of the national movement. He became so popular that he is called the Grand Old Man of India. He introduced many reform movements among the Parsis. Throughout his life, he believed in the equal treatment of men and women and always raised the importance of providing education to the women. Dadabhai Naoroji was also a staunch believer of the principles of equality and fraternity. So we can conclude that Sikh reform movements were started by the Singh Sabhas and Akali Dal, whereas Sir Syed Ahmad Khan worked for reforms among the Muslims and Dadabhai Naoroji worked to bring reformation in the Parsi community. Now I hope the lesson is clear to you. Your today's homework is to solve the back exercises and learn the lesson.